everybody, it's Steve Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we are going to do something special before we get back to the topic we last chatted about, which was the structure, if you will, of change work system coaching or Oracle, the self-coaching, whatever you happen to be doing, just so we can say, hey, no, there is a method, there is a structure that we follow, and so this is what it is, and try to follow it as much as makes sense for the work you're doing with your client. After we had that conversation, or we were having that conversation, we got to the subject of Chat GPT, and we talked for a few minutes about that. Well, after that, T. Waldman Williams reached out to me and said that she was doing a project with a client and she wanted me to help her with the activity list. And we're at that stage where we need to develop, decide what are the ideal locations. And so I figured that's something that everyone benefits from reviewing. So I thought we'd take a look at this and see how quickly can we name the ideal location for each one of these. Well, after she sent over her list, which is what you're seeing up here on the top of the page, where am I at? Let me click over here, overseeing or doing maintenance. And you see she's got a little stray open parenthesis over there. It's all fine. There's a period there, but they're not everywhere, and blah, 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 blah. It's all good. I said, you know what? You should feed this into Chat GPT and see what Chat GPT does to it, just, in the name of cleaning it all up. And so this is what she got back from Chat GPT. It says, as an AI language model, I don't have personal opinions, but I can analyze and provide insights based on the given list of activities for an executive director of an early learning center. The following activities appear to be mission critical for an executive director. So ensuring payroll is completed in a timely manner, overseeing billing. If I go down every one of these, they're all very well written, very consistent, I don't know, it's all just good. And so it's almost like I want to make a new formal step of you guys creating activity lists as far as best practices go, is to tell you, now give it to Chat GPT and let it clean things up. So I thought that was pretty good. So yeah. What else can I tell you about that? Anyway, it's kind of fun. So
Hey T,
yeah.
do you have the prompt that she put in that she entered?
I don't, but I'll see if it's elsewhere, because she also had another list of activities specific to human resources, and then ChatGPT fixed those up as well, but I don't see where her query was put in.
Yeah, because what's interesting, the prompt matters so much. Is like
It does. It really
is
does.
more detailed you are, or
Yeah.
I forgot one of the terminology that I was looking at last night for it, where
Yeah.
because looking at several different types of prompts.
Yep.
And when you put the prompt in for it to act as a particular
Yep.
leader or
Mhm.
industry leader, it gives you a different output.
It certainly does. It certainly does. It also gives you a different output if you specify the targeted audience for whatever it is that the copy
Yeah.
is going to be used for. And it's amazing how quickly it can just jump in and give you multiple versions of something.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I gotta believe we all are on the same page when I say, wouldn't it have been handy to have this a decade ago? 20 years ago? David, how long have you been doing what we do?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
Brian, it's like
Next year, I will have been graduated from college 40 years.
there you go.
Wow.
All right. So we needed this. This could have
Mhm.
helped us with all the stuff that, I mean, I get it. It's not a Nobel Prize piece of writing, but we're not looking for that. We just want something that's clear and practical, and it takes something off of our list of such tedious tasks to do.
Yeah, I heard about a resource that actually can detect AI written dialogue.
Yeah, in fact, the people at OpenAI, for their
Yeah.
developers that are working on ChatGPT, they also give you a tool just like that that allows you to scan anything and it'll tell you how much of it generated. I love that. My goal is to create a whole book based on tension management that is 99% created by ChatGPT.
All
I
right.
think I think that'd be hysterical to give it chapters of all the stuff, all the articles I've already written, and just say, we're writing a new book. So you
Yeah.
go right ahead.
Yeah. I just think the more these kinds of things come out, I'm not on that bandwagon that says, these things going to take over jobs and what they're doing to our
Yeah,
brain.
things will
But I
change.
think
Things will change.
exactly, they'll keep changing. And in fact, the more these kinds of things come out, I think the more should investigate these as partners or tools, because people's minds are overcrowded, right?
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah.
so just to get ideas out of one's head and do that in a way, like in health design thinking, we use all these post-it notes and we're all over the place with it.
Oh,
This
yeah.
helps me create ideas and instantaneously.
I agree. It's like sitting down with a very knowledgeable and trusted advisor. I love it. I absolutely love it. Love it. I think the dark side of all that is that I'm an introvert, and so I'm reclusive by nature. Um, I could see that I'm the kind of person who is likely to turn Chat GPT into an actual person in my head, because then I got a buddy and people can't say I don't have friends. So,
So T, you mentioned about the book writing, and one of the things with AI and Chat GPT in particular that I've thought about is how does Chat GPT differ from those who use ghostwriters?
well, exactly. All it does is does it faster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
And
It just does it faster.
yeah, yeah. And again, I think ChatGPT to a certain extent could generate some ideas, but if you're writing something like a book, you already have an idea. And you're the one who's driving the queries. So you end up
Yeah.
creating a totally unique book than someone else who came to ChatGPT and say, help me write a book on the same subject.
Right. I got the book from that author. His name is Hassan, Hassan Osman. And the title is Chat GPT for Nonfiction Authors, how to
Right.
use Chat GPT to write better, faster, and more effectively.
Yeah, right. And look how fast he came out with that book.
Mm-hmm.
So I
You know,
wonder if he had GPT helped him write it. It's got to be the case. It's got to be the case.
I was talking to the OCBA this morning, the Well-Being Committee, the Oakland County Bar Association, and I brought up Chat GPT, and most of them had not heard of it.
Right.
Wow.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, no, one guy actually pulled it up and did a couple of examples, but they had and if it's trainable, just think about the productivity increases you could get. Let's say you're a lawyer writing a brief,
Right.
and it usually takes you 20 hours to write a brief. Well, if you could train Chat GPT with a bunch of previous briefs, all you would have to do is read and edit.
Well, exactly right. In fact, you probably saw the article about ChatGPT passed the bar exam in some state. I forget which state it was, but ChatGPT actually passed the bar exam. So you're right. What if there was one industry that should jump all over it? It's that legal industry.
Yep. It passed
Legal
the
and
medical
accounting.
license. Yep.
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 Accounting
Exactly.
is very predictable.
Very
Yeah.
predictable.
It
Well,
passed
back
the
in the day
medical
when,
license exam as well.
yeah,
It passed it with flying colors. It passed the medical licensing exam.
right. And then you think about how if you just put the speech to text interface on it, which is already available, it's just not built in to Chat GPT, then I can hear physicians with a patient dictating notes that are being immediately transcribed and polished up. I'm sure that technology already exists and is already in use because there's been dictation equipment forever. But
Yeah.
can you imagine having it not just done, but done to final copy quality?
Yeah. Go
That fast.
Forward is a concierge medical provider. They use that now, so the technology is in the wall.
Yep.
So as a physician is speaking, the patient summary is printed by the end of the visit to give to the
hmm
patient.
Yeah, very good. So, hey, you know what? It's here. It's not going to go away. It's going to keep getting bigger. We might as well get used to it.
Hey, Tim sent a video to me a couple of weeks ago where some guys were talking about the field that was one of the fields created from Chat GPT or probably just AI in general called prompt engineers
Oh
that are
yeah.
earning in excess of 350K.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In fact, well, I want to show you guys a picture of something. Just one second here. chat amongst yourselves. So are all of you guys on ChatGPT? Chris, Tim, Shags? You guys played with it or something akin to it?
Yep.
Yeah,
All
yes.
right. Okay, I'm looking for a particular file, so just give me a half.
What is a prompt engineer?
A prompt engineer is the person who knows how to talk to the AI.
Ah, got it.
Because you
Got
have
it.
to make a query. So like for Mid-Journey, everything begins with imagine. And now you start to describe exactly what you wanted to create. Well, the order in which you provide certain pieces of information can greatly impact the outcome. And
Mm.
so you have to get good at nesting the key directions of the queries and all that. So yeah. All right, I really do want to look for this. So you guys just have to give me a jiffy. It's just the 5 of us right now, so you guys can be as pleasant as you want to be. And I don't think I'm going to publish this recording if we're just going to talk about this kind of fun. Oh no, I have to because I want. Oops, wait, what just happened? Who am I? Okay, I'm back. I've got to send the part about the ideal locations over to T. So I promised I would do that. But give me just a second here. I do want to show you something to yeah, to your point. All right, so anyway, while I'm waiting for that to happen, let's look at a couple of these, like number 9, implementing all regulations. How did ChatGPT change it? Oh no, they just polished it up. So they're not trying to interpret it. They just tried to kind of make it look a little bit better or whatever. Where some of them, I think one of them providing timely and constructive feedback was, look how it was here, providing learning opportunities. Yeah. Okay, obviously I can't do 2 things at once and find what I was looking for, but oh dang. Would have been a good answer for you too, Brian. All right, so let me give you guys one to ponder while I do this. The question is, where on the change grid would the ideal location be for a particular activity? And the thing that I want to exercise with you guys today is not your ability to do it, but your ability to do it quickly. And so these don't take a lot of deep thought and diving and debate. We want to get to the point where we can just say, I hear keywords, that gives me key locations, and kind of jump from there. And so just to give you your little grounding for locations. Let me scoot this over a little bit. Thank you. All right. So primarily we're going to be looking at the layer with the 16 energies. And by the way, you guys are going to be seeing only composites moving forward. If I know everyone is ChangeWorks trained and all that, because you should be able to do everything just by looking at this one diagram. All right. So we're going to talk about that for the most part. All business-related activities are likely to be plotting where on the change grid, of the choices being upgrid, outgrid, downgrid, or ingrid. Where would the ideal location be for anything related to business?
Out and up.
Out.
I'm thinking a little out for sure as we get to fine tuning. Some things up, some things down, but it definitely needs to be our focus is outgrid. So whenever I need to do this task of finding ideal locations for things, I glance at the list and I say, is this all about doing something businessy? Is this all trying to make something happen? Is this all driver stuff at its heart? And the answer is invariably yes. So, all right, good. So I don't need to worry about the primary energy. I know the primary energy is driver. And so the only question remaining is what type of driver would I want the person to be based on that activity? Would the expressive driver energy, the driven driver energy, the analytical driver energy, or the amiable driver energy best serve that task? Maybe it's something that you say, no, we want to be kind of like right in the middle of all of it. This needs to be a balanced kind of driver energy, which case the ideal location would be 9-9. Maybe you say it really needs to be a good blend of the driver energy and the expressive energy. Needs to be right there. Don't just be expressive driver, really add another dose of driver to that. So you might say somewhere along this line. So I want you guys to get very good at very quickly saying, I know the primary energy is a given. The secondary energy, how fast can I determine that? And once we get to that point, we can take things a little bit deeper for you. Okay, so shall
I
we?
was thinking about that in terms of like number 5, overseeing and doing maintenance, right? So if you're overseeing something and doing it, you know, to do it in a way, you can be doing it fast, but if you do it in a way that's burnout, you're going to move from whatever original location you're in. So that,
Right.
it's not a sustainable tension a lot of times in some of those activities. So I was going to ask that question about the balance as I'm looking at some of these here.
Right. Well, each of these activities are going to be very specific in their ideal location if we wanted to be really fine-tuned about it. So I I think your point about burnout is just going to hold true, not based on secondary energies, but the primary energy. If someone lives
Mm,
out here in driver mode all the time, all day, every day, and everything they're doing, we all know some kinds of people that are like that, highly competitive and um, you know, uh, very strong ego, energy, that sort of thing, very confident. All these things are happening out there. I think that's what's exhausting.
mm,
Where if I say, well, is an expressive driver a more exhausting place to be than a slightly driven driver? And again, I'm looking at tertiary energies as well, because I just automatically do. Is it more of an analytical thing? I would imagine I'm going to run out of energy a lot faster if I'm doing an expressive driver or a driven driver activity. The amiable driver and the analytical driver feel like they're just a kind of a subset of the general energy anyway. We know on the change grid who's fast and who's slow. Well, upgrid and outgrid tend to be very fast, and downgrid and ingrid tend to be slow. And so those things are all going to hold true. So I know I've just said a whole lot, but
mhm.
ultimately, we're just saying we need to lean a particular way. Your point, I think, is that, well, what if you just stayed a balanced driver? Just stay in the middle. On the one hand, I'd go like, well, that could be great depending on the activity. But bottom line, I'm still stuck smack dab in the driver energy, and that's going to take a toll all by itself.
Got it.
Was that
Okay.
a big answer for no reason?
No, it's good.
Yeah. Oh, Chris, you chatted that over to hosts and panelists. Let me see if I can re-chat it over to everybody. I think I can. Here it is.
Oh, okay. Thank you, T.
No, it wouldn't let me do it. It
I'll
won't let me
try. I'll
copy
try to
all of it. So
resend
yeah,
that.
if you just send that again to everybody. I always forget in my chat window to switch it to everyone. So you guys might want to do that too.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not letting me copy.
I don't think you can copy something that's inside of that chat. I
You
think
can,
you have
but you have to highlight it and then right click to select copy.
yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Right. If I do
So
that.
T,
Cool.
compassion fatigue is associated with the burnout of uh, physicians and nurses and healthcare professionals.
Okay.
So you're compassionate about what you're doing. So you're experiencing that driver energy, but the way that burnout is classified from this compassion fatigue perspective is emotional exhaustion. I forget some of the other terms they use. So
Mm-hmm.
so you have this driver energy, but it's not sustained at your level, whatever
Right. Well,
that
and
level is.
that brings up the question, is any one location on the change grid going to be healthy if sustained for a prolonged period of time?
Mm,
I imagine they're all going to be damaging at a certain point. We need to be able to move all over the change grid. We need to be able to go down to power apathy and apathy to rest. We need to reserve our energy, by not overextending ourselves on social things, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Brian, can I ask Brian a question, T?
sure, go right ahead. Yeah.
sure.
Brian, do you think it's that physicians don't have enough self emotional intelligence or compassion for themselves that allows that burnout to creep in?
I think so. That's a great question. What I'm seeing, particularly about younger physicians and even nurses, like I'm working with a nurse right now, we talk about this idea of resilience, right? There's not enough of that. So they have
Right.
seem to have lower thresholds than older generations.
Mhm.
So their tolerance level to go up, down, which is, expected and a kind of a staple in the industry, right? You can have these significant highs, significant lows. They don't seem to have it anymore.
Right. Well, let me see if I could explain from a tension management perspective how I think the dynamic might be being created. Our focus is on the idea that someone who is an amiable driver, in fact, this would be a driven, amiable driver, really wanting out there to care, then all that strong kind of energy around there. The thought is that this is exhausting for the person. And I would say to you that this is rejuvenating for that person. What's exhausting them is the stuff that comes along with all that, the upgrade sorts of things. Because if we look at something like people during the pandemic, how exhausted they got, did they get exhausted because of patient care or because they needed to worry about all this stuff that moved them upgrade and they had to go and do all this kind of stuff? And then there was all this documentation and there weren't enough people. Was it because of an additional activity load or a change in activity perception in the things that would be more an expressive driver, a driven driver, or an analytical driver that distracted and sapped their energy, rendering them unable to provide the level of care that they would otherwise want to provide? I know that's a lot
Right.
of words, but does that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's why I like David's question, because what he described is to me is, if one person burn out an organization, another person doesn't, it can't be the organization alone, right? So we have to see burnout as a two-sided coin. You have the individual and their thresholds, but then you have the system
Yeah.
itself.
Right.
And so it's those two working together. And I just don't see a lot of physician and or nurses that really have that self-care. You're in the business of care, but
Mhm.
that self-care that like David was just describing, I don't see a lot of it. And it's astounding to me.
Well, just, again, take a look at the change grid. That location we're talking about for that driven, amiable driver is right on the edge of the green circle. So there is no sense of centering and homing and, finding peace and all that sort of stuff. So I think it was to David's point, if anyone who's in a stressful job or a stress-filled job doesn't know how to retreat and
Mm.
renew and restore, then yeah, there's going to be burnout. But I'm just saying that the passion that they have for doing certain parts of the job, I don't think is what's causing the problem.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at
It's
all.
these other things that are being piled on top of them, which prevent them from doing the kind of job they really want to be doing.
Right.
I think that's a great conversation, and I think that I like the concept, Brian, of replenish, because there's a couple of things. So one, when I think about physical exercise, working out, and that whole process of exercise, diet, and rest, how critical rest is in that process. But also in the work that we do around human development, I'm thinking, as you all were discussing it, I was thinking of, when I'm doing corporate training programs and the amount of energy that I have to exert to engage people to talk about a very difficult topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And by the end of the day, particularly if I'm doing a 2-day program, at the end, my energy level is zapped.
Right.
Yep.
And at the end of, and especially pre-COVID when we were traveling a lot. And so at the end of the day, you just want to replenish. And sometimes you get folks wanting to engage you further in dialogue, whether it's your phone ringing from someone back home or whatever. And I've heard other, trainers say, at the end of the day, I don't want to talk to anybody.
Right. And meanwhile, your client has invited you out to dinner, or they want you all to stop by the pub on the way, and it's just kind of like, oh man,
With the whole team.
right. It's like I'm done.
Right.
And on the one hand, you go like, they're well-wishers. They're acknowledging that they find value in who we are and what we do. So I want to, on the one hand, go, I have to appreciate their intention. I just don't have the energy. Now, that could be because, I'm an INTP. It may very well be that people who are naturally more of the extrovert they think staying with a client till, you know, bedtime is perfectly exciting and wonderful, and that's how they recharge their batteries. I can't relate to that personally, but
There's a wonderful video I've used in prior programs, and there are folks with different diversity dimensions that the clip addresses. But there's this one gentleman who's like 4'8", and I've never forgotten this comment he makes in the end where he says, "The amount of energy it takes to make other people comfortable with your difference is exhausting."
I'm sure.
Mm,
Yep.
And so
mm,
and we've had wonderful dialogue around just that simple comment, where people are challenged to think about, you know, what this gentleman is saying and what his life must be like, or for anyone who has a diversity dimension in a group of people,
That's right.
and just that energy that people exhort, trying to make other people comfortable. You know, you're aware of it, so I mean, it's incredible.
Right. And the sad part of that is that at the heart of it is that we weren't trained as we were being raised to
mhm,
simply you know, I'm not suggesting that people don't see the differences, but don't what do I say, misvalue the
mm.
differences,
Right, right.
you
Yeah,
know.
misvalue it. Exactly.
And you know, and we're, you know, where do you learn to be comfortable walking up to someone in a wheelchair and saying to them, you're in a wheelchair. Tell me, you know, it's like if I'm a little kid, we have to say that that's not something you should be asking someone.
Hmm.
You know, you shouldn't ask people about whatever their differences are because you know it's wrong to call attention to their differences, which ends up leaving someone with these unanswered questions. And because there's these unanswered questions, they would then, I would think, naturally want to avoid being in such situations.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you guys with what I'm
Yeah,
trying to kind of communicate? It's
exactly.
like
Yes.
we have to normalize it all. And
Hmm.
rather than put the burden of normalization on the shoulders of the person with whatever the difference happens to be, it really should just be something that we're kind of raised
Right. To
to
understand
celebrate,
about
if you will.
everybody has some humanity, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll give you an example. At my gym, one of the trainers who works out of our gym was in a motorcycle accident years and years ago, and he lost one of his legs. And he's got this really, I mean, when you see his prosthesis, it is like state of the art. It's like got all kinds of amazing sorts of, you know, servo mechanisms and chips, and it has to be recharged and all this kind of stuff. And so um, I I've just kind of walked up to him one day and said, I got to ask you, what does a state of the art prosthesis cost? And
Mm,
we'd never chatted about his injury or anything, but that's a curiosity question. I would like to think that that's an okay thing to ask because he immediately said, if you can believe it, these are like $75,000
mm.
and it has a replay. I mean, who knew? And I never would have known about what it, you know, what life is like when you have to deal with that as a part of your practical day. So how do we
Yeah,
make it okay?
right, right. We've
Oh,
always been trained uh in Africa, in Zulu, it's a sawubona, which means I see you, I greet your humanity. So
yes,
it's not like a normal hello. And
right.
so you're always trained to look at the person, the whole person, regardless to what
Mm,
they are or have or wearing, any of that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Sounds like
Um,
Avatar, Brian.
it is. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah. Avatar got it
exactly,
from somewhere. That's great. David, to your
exactly.
question, we can talk about building resilience whenever you really want. So
I
we,
think that would be a good thing because the reason I asked about that burnout, you know, World Health Organization has now categorized that as an occupational phenomenon and with the ICD code. So you can now go through the physician, be treated for that and stress. And I'm like, dude, this is not a new phenomenon, right?
right.
So it just seems like people aren't really understanding. I started asking professionals, like, what's your recovery strategy to what Tim was talking about? And people like, what the hell is that? Like, oh, how do you calm down from stress of the day?
Yeah,
Oh, I have to have my guilty pleasures, man. I binge on Netflix. I don't even want to think.
Right.
So if you're thinking about like an athlete, they have specialized recovery strategies to help them to, move forward to the next day, to
True.
let the body reset. Like when I go to Central America, South America next week, I double up, on the recovery because of travel and
Right.
things.
Of course. Yep.
But
Yeah.
people just don't seem like that's an important or like to incorporate this kind of personal sustainability as an afterthought for many people until they express some symptoms that's coming from the stress or the burnout and they're getting a pill for it. I
Yeah.
think we can resolve that long before that happens.
Right. The question is going to be then, where is the patient on the grid and where do you need to keep them on the grid? Because again, like we are talking about last time around, does the knowledge that a solution exists guarantee forward movement in that direction?
Mm,
The answer is no. That knowledge
yeah,
something exists lowers tension. So
yeah.
try to make sure it doesn't lower too far. Okay, let's just kind of jump into this list for just a few of these things. We obviously won't do all of them because there's a quick pattern. But if I say ensuring payroll is completed in a timely manner, what energy are we looking at?
Analytical.
Analytical
Analytical.
driver. Overseeing billing to ensure it's completed in a timely manner.
Analytical.
Analytical. Using new technology, providing effectiveness. Do I even need to read more or do you get using new technology? Where does it go?
It's either analytical or driven.
I
That
don't,
could be a mixture.
in which case you would say, oh, that's going to go halfway between. So rather than calling it 10 and 8 or 10 and 10, or say you might say it's 10 and 9 because it's
Oh, okay.
halfway between it's a better balance of those two energies. And that's what you're saying. I don't need one to be primary. I need them to work together. Okay. So again, it's just kind of a fast thing. Overseeing or doing maintenance. Um,
Expressive driver.
an expressive driver, perhaps leaning towards the driven driver,
Yep.
depending on what kind of maintenance
Halfway down.
you're doing. Yep. All right,
What about the
facilitate.
collaborating one? Is that
Oh,
amiable?
there we go. Collaborating on the creation of a budget. Oh, I
No,
would.
that's more like an analytical, but because you're on a budget, so you have to be
You're right.
analytical.
But you observe that that specific verb implies that some other people need to be involved.
Yeah,
And so
amiable.
you're
Which
actually
is,
Right in the middle of the driver behavior where you had at the center.
see,
yeah.
that's interesting because I was thinking it would have been expressive
Ooh,
Ooh, okay, do tell. So you want
because it requires interpersonal skills.
mm,
You're collaborating, you're engaging
Right.
other folks.
I
So
think you're right, Tim.
So if we look at a little continuum here, the amiable energy is about caring. The expressive energy is about exactly that word, expressing, feeling, and communicating that. And so when I think of collaborating, I think it's also a question of who's in the room, who's on this collaboration potential team. Because if it's a bunch of analytical types, then collaborating may feel very differently than if I need the expressive energy thrown in, where I need more of a cheerleader, a visionary, somebody who's going
Well,
to
it is, it is a budget T.
Yeah, so that's why I was kind of leaning, going, well, this is a little bit more down, and that supports whoever said maybe it should just go smack dab in the middle.
Right.
yeah.
This particular one. Because that means someone has to facilitate the collaboration, right? I mean, it doesn't just happen. So there's an order and organization to a strong collaboration. So
This is very valuable, T, about setting ideal locations on the change grid
Mhm,
or doing change grids. I think this is very valuable.
excellent,
mhm.
excellent. And
Plus, this is a
again,
budget for what is the
sorry, I'll tell you, it's a
SSELC?
budget for the executive committee, or the
Ah,
board is what
okay,
she's calling it.
okay,
Yeah, and
okay.
by the way, some of these activities are too long. We've got about 140 character limit in the name of the activity. Otherwise, you got to put the longer copy in the description block right next to it. But anyway, nevertheless, doesn't really matter. Collaborating on the creation of a budget for SSELC used by the board. I would just put a period there. I'll assume it's for financial purposes. Oh, by the way, that's how they probably edited it. There you go. ChatGPT says, no, it's collaborating on the creation of a budget. Okay, thank you. Cut through the murk. All right, so yeah. So that to me feels like a middle of power, kind of scratch that, a middle of the driver kind of energy. Okay, the next one, and again, what I want to exercise here is speed, because while we can do a deep discussion about each one of them, that's a different exercise for a different day. All right, keeping the board apprised of center challenges and opportunities.
Expressive driver.
Espresso.
Expressive driver, great, great, great. There's a sale that needs to happen there a little bit, maybe. Supporting in fundraising activities for the organization.
That's amiable.
Amiable. Yeah.
That's the amiable, yep. Implementing all regulations.
Driven.
Driven.
Driver, yep. Helping parents understand regulations and policy change.
Amiable.
Amiable. Working with parents to balance childcare needs with financial realities.
Let's see, that has amiable, but I think, yeah.
I'm thinking amiable.
I'm thinking amiable, but the moment they talk about balancing something and
Right.
financial realities, I'm hearing analytical, and so I would go smack dab between the two of them. So rather than giving it 8 and 8, which would be the amiable driver, or 10 and 8, which would be the analytical driver, I'm just going to put them right on the border and say when it comes to secondary energy, I need a nice blend. Both the amiable and the analytical, because they got to be caring and they got to be sharing the right information. That's how I interpret that activity. Okay, again, we're doing deeper than we normally do, but I'm all right with all that. Working with parents. No, we did that one. Helping parents understand. Oh, we did that one. Communicating with parents on challenges with their children.
Expressive.
Amiable, expressive. So
No, I've got expressive.
this is an early learning center. I'll give you a little bit more information. Pretty much all the kids are under 5 years old. These are 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. So when it talks about challenges with their children, you can imagine what kind of stuff falls into that category. So basically, you got an unruly kid is probably what it is, or you've got someone who's not participating or whatever. They've got an issue. So what kind of energy is going to be doing the best job of helping them, communicating with the challenges with their kids?
Amiable.
I'm thinking amiable, but I'm also thinking that I don't want them to be too supportive, too caring. There's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We need this problem addressed. So did you just hear a little more of a driver energy get added?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would move it, I think, out just to 9-9. So that's more of a balanced driver energy, but it's still on the edge. Maybe if I had a half point, I give it 8.5 and 9.5, but you get the idea. The driven, amiable driver is someone who absolutely wants to accomplish something, and they're coming from a place of caring, but there is a task that needs to be focused on. So that's the 3 energies. You could just leave it there, or you could say, no, we got a problem. And so maybe it needs a little bit more of that driver energy added to it. All right. Because you guys know this, if you've worked with these kinds of places, if your social service, your social workers are too much on the social work side of thing and not enough on the fact that there's a whole population that we're trying to deal with, and there's a bigger thing afoot than me counseling one family or one situation, that doesn't bode well for a lot of real forward movement. Someone needs to step up to the plate and really be pulling this energy into an even more driver thing. Now, we just had an in-depth conversation. I say we were going to do that. My fault, my bad. Okay, making decisions to have children leave the center based on repeated challenges.
Well, if you're just making decisions, then you're a driven driver.
Okay.
You're sharing that decision with the parents. It's totally different.
But you have to be analytical to make the decision.
Well, there you go. That's a better thought.
Okay, and what about this conversation? Well, no, this is just about making the decisions. Fine. Making the decisions. I think you guys are right. There is definitely a driver kind of thing because it sounds very
Mhm.
conclusive to me. And there is most definitely an analytical element specified in the task. So just put on the border between the two. So for that one, you'd say 10 and 9. Yep. Makes sense.
Yes.
Yep. I know we're talking about intermediate energies and that, but I think you guys can handle that. And then some. Optimizing volunteers for greater impact and use.
Expressive driver.
Expressive driver, yes. Because they're the ones that are, you always got to look at the verb. Optimizing. Optimizing has an analytical tone to it, doesn't it?
Does.
If I'm choosing the better
Mhm.
thing. But when I talk about greater impact, I feel driver energy. And putting them to good use feels more like an amiable sort of a thing.
Amiable, yeah.
So I think I want to put it smack dab in the middle
Hmm.
because maybe, just maybe, when it comes to optimizing volunteers, sometimes I need to be expressive and sometimes I need to be directive and sometimes I just need to know what the heck I'm talking about and communicating it accordingly. And sometimes I need to come at it from a caring perspective. Whenever you can make a debate about it, just put it in the middle and call it a day. Okay. All right. Providing learning opportunities for employees at staff meetings.
That's a driver for me.
There's a driver element to it,
Providing. Analytical driver.
analytical driver. Yep, I'm providing a learning opportunity for employees at staff meetings. I think that's analytical. Maybe there's a
Amiable
little element of driver. Are you think there's some amiable too?
because of learning.
You want
You
them to
know,
be learning?
there's
Yeah,
a difference between being like a mentor and a tormentor, right? So you just don't want to force the information on people if you want them to learn from it. That's
right,
the
right,
problem with
right.
stress.
And when I see like learning opportunities, it almost feels like there should be some kind of expressive energy going on. And so what's our answer?
In the middle.
Smack it in the middle. Yep. Nice balanced driver. They got to be flexible to do this. Well,
Ensuring.
ensuring that the rooms, common grounds, and all the spaces are safe and secure. Again, you got a bunch of 3 and 4 year olds running around.
Oh yeah, you need
I would want a driven driver to do that.
Driven driver.
an analytical to make sure you're actually following protocols, that kind
If
of
you can
stuff.
build the case for 2, what do you do?
In the middle.
In
Go
middle.
middle of the 2. So there you are.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Overseeing seasonal decorating of the common space in classrooms.
Expressive driver.
Expressive driver. So expressive driver up here. I'm seeing if there's any amiable energy. Although, don't you think like an amiable is going to make it more fun or more whatever? Or I don't
Decorative.
know. No, maybe.
And
And
see,
overseeing. Okay, and again, anytime you can build debate, you can have to put a solid argument for 2 of them. Which one do you choose?
In between.
Smack dab in the middle. So I guess it depends what season. If the season is a happy one, maybe some expressive driver. If it's a solemn one, maybe we should just stick with the more amiable side of things. So go smack dab in the middle and you're good to go.
that let me just say the minority point of view here on this
Please
then.
do, please do.
No pun intended. Uh,
That would have to come from a DEI guy.
Yeah.
but it just seems to me like more of a cognitive exercise there because, and I'm struggling with some of these because it just doesn't give me enough. So
Right.
overseeing to me could simply mean I'm just making sure that things are in place, that I'm not physically doing anything, but I'm ensuring that the end result can happen by
Excellent.
taking a look at things and ensuring that everything is going to be set up. So I don't know. There's been a couple of these that have just sort of challenged me in that way.
I'm glad you noticed that because that's always going to be part of the discussion that we want to have with the client before we finalize it, because we really should focus on the verb as chosen. that verb overseeing. You can forget everything that follows behind it. Where does someone on the job, on the change grid, do the best job of overseeing?
Analytical driver.
The
Mhm.
analytical driver. And so, great catch, Tim. I mean, that's absolutely right. And was there another one that you was the same thing? Because
Yeah, the optimizing, the providing, the one we just left, providing learning opportunities. I can see that as if I'm a department head, just making sure that
yeah,
that this
the
is going to
checklist.
happen, that I'm going to make sure that I've got this set up for the team to experience.
There you are. And maybe the same thing about ensuring that rooms that might actually be
Right,
more
right.
of the analytical. Although if there is like an what do you call it when they come in and evaluate you? An inspection going on or whatever, maybe that driven driver energy is going to help
Mhm.
put the final polish on things.
Yeah.
All right, let's just do one or two more of these. So adjusting the center schedule to meet the challenges of the day. Adjusting is the key verb.
Sounds like an analytical.
Analytical.
An analytical task. Ensuring food quality and compliance with regulations.
Also sounds
Yes,
analytical.
yeah.
Analytical, maybe a little bit outgrid if they more outgrid if they got in trouble or they're wanting a higher rating or whatever. I don't know what they're going after. Overseeing activities to ensure food regulations, costs, and enjoyment are optimized. Well,
Mm.
the key verb still puts it as an analytical task.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if you say, no, 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 who's actually ensuring the food regulations, costs, and enjoyment are optimized? I think costs and regulations are being done by somebody who isn't really about enjoyment. I don't know. So there's more opportunity for more activities to explore. And but you always got to go back to the verb as specified. Negotiating costs with vendors.
Driven expressive.
Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
Expressive driver. Yep. Yep. Or David, are you saying no more, even more expressive?
No, I'm saying more driven.
Oh, okay, fine. All right. So you're choosing this one, a driven expressive driver rather than an analytical expressive driver. So do you guys see how David's observation there adds another dose of driver energy? Well, that tells you what direction to move as you're looking on there. So if you're going like, well, an analytical expressive driver, okay, well, at least they're an expressive driver, but they're still at that calculating third energy. Do I need a calculating third energy or just need someone to push a little harder? So
Mm.
that's how you make these subtle movements around the change grid, one spot to another. And even as fine-tuned as that is, I can tell you, as you do it more and more, you're going to go, I really want halfway, like right there would be enough, So you do once you start to appreciate it, you really do start zooming in deeper and deeper. Okay, yeah. So negotiating. So I think negotiating is being, driver energy. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, when conveying the secondary, and this is coming out of the exchange with David just now,
Yes.
when conveying the secondary energy, that's not a natural flow for me mentally. So sometimes
Oh,
my brain
yeah.
locks up on that.
Yeah, let me tell you my normal phrasing in my head as I'm doing it. I know that driver energy overall wants a particular outcome. That's the primary energy tells me what that primary outcome happens to be. The question that the secondary energy answers is how do I go about doing that? And so if I am an analytical driver, I will most likely make something happen by proving my way to it. Where the driven driver would be more of someone who's pushing the way through it. A driven
Oh,
driver.
I'm sorry, T. Maybe I didn't articulate that the most effective way. So what I'm asking, like for instance, with the one that we just did, where David said, I think David, you said driven expressive,
Yep.
Right here.
and
Yeah.
T, you said, so you mean expressive driver? Which one do
Oh,
you? Yeah, that was a great example of my struggle.
yeah. English is okay. English is a backwards language, and so when we're putting
Mhm.
multiple adjectives in a row, the biggest goes last. So the primary energy is going to be the last word used, and you would see us depicted in all capital letters. So here we have driver in all capital letters as the big one, but driver, 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 driver. The secondary energy is going to be in with a capital letter. Also is the first one. So the debate for David was, did he want to be an expressive driver or a driven expressive driver? That's the tertiary energy, as opposed to an expressive driven, no, a driven expressive. Wow. Okay, Tim, am I still confused? I've lost track of what I'm explaining.
Great example, T, of my struggle.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the whole point. As long as we keep the energies in order, we're just zooming in tighter and tighter. So that's why I said the primary energy for this one, make no mistake about it, when it comes to making changes, blah, blah, making changes is a driver energy, right?
Mhm.
No
Right.
argument there. What kind of driver makes changes based on input from employees and other stakeholders? Who makes changes based on input, or what energy is it parallels that? How? Because again, they said making changes. Well, how? Well, based on input from employees and other stakeholders. What's the answer to the how?
Yeah, it's weird, but it sounds analytical to me.
Well, I think it's definitely going to sound like it's analytical. Let's look at here, from employees and other stakeholders.
I
So
think it kind of sounds amiable.
Well, and I'm doing this on purpose because whoever said making changes is going to be an analytical. You're on the right track, but what kind of analytical is going to make the changes? So, based on the facts of the matter, and so let me look at this without giving it away. I know it's a driver energy. When it comes to making a change, who do you think is most effective at making changes? An amiable, an expressive, a driven,
Driver.
A driven.
a driven driver. But
Mhm.
I've got 4 different kinds of driven drivers, or more if I really want to get into specific locations. I got at least 4. Do you want let's look at the activity again. It's making changes based on input from employees and other stakeholders. So it's not based on my own opinion. It's not based
Right.
on a little whim I have. It's based on input I've sought out and successfully obtained from others. And so does that feel like I have added in the tertiary position more expressive energy, where I'm being charming and convincing and suave and all that sort of stuff? More
Mhm.
driver energy, where I'm just being more forceful? More
No.
analytical energy, where I'm building a case for it to be? Or more amiable energy, where I'm approaching it with other people in mind?
Amiable.
I think that.
Amiable. The approaching other people in mind sounds
Right. So
reasonable to me.
Right. And so this is the whole idea about I'm making changes based on input from employees and others. So I'm hearing an amiable, driven driver, this location right here. What I think, though, is particularly important to ponder about that location is we say that location is the hallmark location for a leader. When we think about a leader operating as efficiently, effectively, elegantly as a leader can lead, 1010 is where they belong. So are we saying that it is a best practice of top leadership to make changes based on input from employees and other stakeholders?
Mhm.
And I'm saying absolutely.
Yes.
That's absolutely one of the qualities we would be looking for. And so I'm looking at it from these different kind of vantage points, because if you want to go like, how am I convinced of where I am? There's multiple ways of coming at that question. Where should you be on the grid, and how did you become convinced that that is the right location to be? So anyway, kind of fun. We got time for maybe one more. Um, Performing banking duties for the center.
Analytical driver.
Yeah,
Analytical.
I don't want no expressive driver touching my money. So, yeah, so an analytical driver. And if we want them to really be looking at the best banking, et cetera, maybe a little bit more of a driver, or they're looking for the best return on investment, maybe shift them out, grade one little spot. But overall, if we want to stick to primary and secondary energies, it would be this is a
Now,
good.
that would be a different activity, T, if they were challenged in a crunch for cash.
Right. Because now they're looking for lowering their fees, increasing their returns, whatever, adding a new service, whatever they might really need in the domain of banking services. Provide timely and constructive feedback. We don't need to go to the rest, but for now, providing timely and constructive feedback. Technically, I think those are two different activities.
Well, that's what I was about to say, because I've heard you talk about stacking.
Yeah. And I did have that conversation with T as well. And I said, you got multiple verbs once or twice, and you've got multiple outcomes, the back end of things a lot. And I said, that's not a problem if you're just doing this for like a high level screening sort of a change grid. And then based on what you see from that one, you can do a more fine-tuned specific sort of change grid. That's fine. I don't mind it. Just be aware that you're going to get much higher quality information if you limit it to one verb and one outcome. So yeah, so for example, providing timely feedback to employees on their performance feels different than providing timely feedback to employees on their developmental goals.
Hmm.
I mean, I'd like it to happen at the same time if you don't mind, but it just feels like it's a different kind of a task. And constructive adds a whole new element to the whole task. I can give anybody feedback with no preparation whatsoever. I just don't know how constructive it's going to be. you know? So, oh, right. And if you focus too long on the constructive, you could miss the timing aspect of it.
Which
So,
means it may or may not get done.
right. Or it may not be appropriate. It's like, look,
Hmm.
if the dog poops on the kitchen floor first thing in the morning, you don't correct his behavior next Sunday.
Hmm.
It's got to be in the moment or they're not going to learn. So I understand we're all not a bunch of dogs, but come on. Same principle is there. But nevertheless, who's most likely to provide timely and constructive feedback?
The
I think that's
driven driver, yes, you got to get it done.
Got to get it done. What else, though?
Driver.
Expressive driver, because you got to be getting it done with the right attitude in a way that really has that developmental kind of aspect to it. I think I might also need to be a little caring in it, and it's feedback on their performance. So I guess there's going to be some data involved.
Right in the middle.
There you go. You go right
Mm.
smack dab in the middle. So we're saying when you do this task, whoever's doing it needs to be able to flex into a little bit more driver, a little more expressive, a little more amiable, depending on the situation as it unfolds. So talking about resilience, that's a highly resilient area. Any place of intersection of different energies is a place of high resilience. And
I like this activity. I would like to do some more of it. I think I'm with Tim.
well,
I the secondary part tripped me up a little bit.
yeah,
I had to think about it. Like it didn't come natural. I just
right,
be
right,
quite
right. But
honest.
you know what? Once it clicks, and you go like,
Yeah.
I get it. That's fine. But I will tell you what I wanted you to experience that you did experience for sure was we start to interpret what an activity means
Mm,
instead of take it at face value.
mm.
So when we saw something like, what was it about making sure the bulletin board's looking good? So overseeing seasonal decoration. How many words into it did we suddenly become the decorator? And that was never specified. So we added that to it. So if I think maybe the client did the same thing, I might say to them, what exactly do you mean by overseeing?
Yeah.
So
That's natural though. That's a natural behavior of the
it
brain itself. It tries to categorize things quickly for understanding.
right. Well, and what we call it is tension override.
Mm,
So whenever we read an activity, we may often in our mind replace it with a modified activity and then answer the change grid questions based on the modified activity that exists only in our head. And
Mm.
so this is why it's very important that people understand exactly what I mean by a verb that I'm using. And so what I tend to do, particularly for a group profile, which this is make grand use of the description block. Because in the description block, I can explain to people exactly what I mean by the verb I have chosen. And maybe that's is going to help a higher percentage get on board with where we're really trying to uncover, to learn more about. So the choice of verb is it's central. That's what it's really all about. So going back to coming up with the right prompts, I promise you, this is in that same domain. You got to write the right activity if you really want to get a strong benefit out of using the change grid. Okay, thoughts about that? Anything else? Okay. All right, well, we're at the top of the hour, so I'll thank you all for joining in on the call. We'll pick up where we left off next time. So thanks, everybody. Bye.
Well,
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.